Welcome back. Now, Parliament has lodged an urgent application with the Constitutional Court for an extension of the deadline to finalise the Electoral Amendment Bill. It's requesting that the deadline be pushed to February. In 2020, the Constitutional Court declared the Electoral Act constitutionally invalid as it makes it impossible for candidates to stand for political office without being members of political parties. The initial extension to pass the new bill was for the 10th of this month, but Parliament is now proposing a further extension to allow for public participation. To speak to us more on this, I am joined by Tsalane from the Institute of Election Management Services. Thank you very much, Mr. Tsalane, for your time here on eNCA. So I guess this request was expected because it's not plausible, I guess, to implement a constituency system in time for 2024.
Absolutely. I think Parliament has got noble intentions, particularly because quite a number of people and institutions have already raised issues about consultation and the fact that the current bill did not really meet the requirements of the Constitutional Court. So by requesting an extension, they are trying to find time to cure the defects that have already been identified. However, the difficulty is that with this, Parliament is now encroaching into the time that the Electoral Commission would require to deliver the elections. And I don't think with the current arrangement, it would be feasible to have the elections within a constitutionally stipulated period. I would have thought that Parliament would rather ask for the extension of the suspension of the invalidity of the Electoral Act until after 2024 elections. In other words, this would allow Parliament to proceed and then deal with all the items that have been identified and then put in place proper systems, but also continue to deliver the elections of 2024 within the current Electoral Act.
So wouldn't that be an issue with the Constitutional Court then? Because unless you're saying that the Constitutional Court will have to give them the ability to, squash it for now until after 2024.
Absolutely. The only institution that can be able to empower Parliament or the IEC as the structure that is going to be implementing the Electoral Act is the Constitutional Court. So the Constitutional Court, because as it is, Parliament is asking for extension of the invalidity, of the suspension of invalidity until February. But I don't think they will still be able to cover all the areas that have got to be covered in time for 2024. But also it does not provide IEC with sufficient time.
Yeah.
So if instead of asking until February, they ask for suspension of invalidity until after the 2024 elections, then we do not have a vacuum. We continue to operate with an electoral act that we know is defective, and it means the independents will not necessarily be participating in 2024 if Constitutional Court agrees to that arrangement.
All right. So, but there were also complaints, that the first round of the public comments were not done fairly. So this gives government another chance, I assume?
Absolutely. You know, one of the issues that were raised by quite a number of institutions and individuals like ourselves was that there was not sufficient public participation in the process that Parliament had embarked on. And I think it was great that NCOP really listened to the issues that people had raised and requested that some of those defects be rectified. You know, so but by giving more time for this, and then if this has got to be done properly, I don't think February would actually still be sufficient to deal with the issues that are still there. We've got to ask for I think Parliament has got to ask for the extension of the suspension of the invalidity until after the 2024 elections. It is the only practical way of getting out of the morass that we find ourselves in.
So it doesn't take away, I mean, unless they go with the option that you are suggesting or that you suggested earlier of asking the Constitutional Court to allow them for more time beyond the 2024 national government elections. It doesn't take away from the fact that the elections have to happen in 2024 for now, and it cannot go ahead as is, although Parliament has passed the bill back in October. It can't go ahead in its current form unless they shift the elections further than May of that year.
You are so correct that if we really want to, there are only two options that I think are left. Firstly, I've indicated that the IC will not have sufficient time to deliver the election in time within the constitutionally stipulated period due to the fact that Parliament still has to finalize the framework. Now, the alternative is then to say the elections of 2024 must then be postponed until such time that Parliament has been able to finalize the framework within which the elections will take place. But the second option, which is an option that I think is much better, is what I have suggested, to say that let us suspend rather let's extend the suspension of the invalidity until after the 2024, so that Parliament uses this time to consolidate its position, to make sure that it does a proper research, and then it is able to come up with something that is going to pass the constitutional muster.
Well, it's going to be quite interesting what they decide, Mr. Tsalane, because I can imagine what civil society will say if the Constitutional Court, if they decide to make that application and the Constitutional Court agrees, because it means that it puts the independent candidates on the back burner. But at the same time, we can't not have elections in 2024 because that would be unconstitutional, right?
Absolutely. We have to have the elections in 2024, unless Parliament again, as we have seen during the time when the IC was trying to ask for the postponement of the elections in 2021. Parliament then does the constitutional changes in order to ensure that the elections take place at a time other than in 2024. But I think that is likely to cause an outcry in the country if Parliament then changes the legislation or the constitution in order to change the time within which the elections are supposed to take place.
Yeah. All right, let's see what they decide, and let's see what the Constitutional Court says about their current application. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Tsalane is the Executive Chairman of the Institute of Election Management Services.